Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be looking closely at Luke chapter 21, verses 1 through 38.
Oh, yeah. This is a really interesting section.
It really is. It starts in the temple in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
and Jesus is watching people giving their offerings.
Yeah, you can really picture the scene.
I know, it's so vivid. The courtyard bustling with activity, people from all walks of life dropping their contributions into the treasury.
It's amazing how much we can glean from this passage about the culture and the religious practices of that time.
Exactly. And in this setting, amidst all the hustle and bustle, Jesus singles out this seemingly insignificant act, the offering of a poor widow. It's easy to miss in all the commotion.
It is. It really makes you think about what Jesus is trying to highlight here.
Right, so the widow gives just 2 mites, which is basically nothing.
A tiny amount.
Exactly. But Jesus says that she gave more than all the wealthy people who were giving much larger sums.
Mhm.
So why do you think that is?
Well, because she gave everything she had, you know? The wealthy were giving from their surplus. It didn't really cost them anything. But the widow she gave, sacrificially demonstrating her faith and commitment.
That's a powerful message, isn't it? It's not about the amount we give, but the heart behind it.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder for all of us.
So we start with this quiet scene of observation, this powerful lesson on generosity. And then things take a dramatic turn. Jesus starts talking about the destruction of the temple.
I can't even imagine what must have been going through the disciples' minds when they heard that.
Right, this was their holiest site, the heart of their religious life.
Exactly. To hear that it would be destroyed must have been utterly devastating.
And he doesn't just stop there. Jesus goes on to describe signs to watch out for.
Okay.
Deception, wars, persecution.
It was a very volatile time historically. Speaking of,
Mm.
what was the historical context here?
Well, this period was marked by intense tension between the Jews and the Roman rulers who controlled Jerusalem. There were numerous uprisings and conflicts, so Jesus' warnings were grounded in a very real and volatile historical context.
And just a few decades later, in 70 AD, the temple was destroyed by the Romans, just as Jesus predicted.
Wow, talk about prophecy coming true. So it seems like Jesus was preparing his disciples, giving them tools to navigate the chaos and remain faithful in the face of hardship.
Absolutely. He was equipping them for the challenges that lay ahead, reminding them that even in the midst of trials, they could find strength and hope in their faith.
And that message resonates even today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's timeless wisdom for all of us.
One thing that really strikes me is how vividly Jesus describes the destruction of Jerusalem. It's almost like he's painting a picture with his words, armies surrounding the city suffering devastation.
For those who lived through the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, it must have been chilling to see those words come to life.
Yeah, it just underscores the gravity of his message. Amidst all this talk of destruction and upheaval, there's this intriguing phrase that Jesus uses, the times of the Gentiles.
Oh, yes, that's a key phrase for sure. It refers to a period of Gentile rule over Jerusalem, which, historically speaking, came after the destruction of the temple. It really speaks to this larger historical arc that was unfolding.
And that God's plan often unfolds over long stretches of time. So we've got warnings about deception wars, the destruction of the temple, and then Jesus takes it up another notch. He starts talking about his second coming.
Buckle up.
I know, right?
Uh.
The imagery is intense. The sun and moon, darkening stars falling from the sky, the sea roaring. It's like something out of a movie.
It definitely captures your attention.
For sure.
Hmm.
So how do we make sense of all this? What's going on here?
Well, this type of imagery is common in what scholars call apocalyptic literature. Think of it as symbolic language.
So it's more about the deeper meaning behind the imagery than a literal interpretation.
Exactly. The message here is one of hope and redemption for believers in Jesus, even amidst these tumultuous events.
So amidst all the chaos, there's this message of hope shining through.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that no matter what challenges we face, our faith can sustain us.
So it's like this cosmic drama is unfolding.
Yeah.
And yet there's this underlying sense of hope and anticipation for those who trust in Jesus.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message to hold on to, isn't it? Especially when things feel uncertain and chaotic.
Absolutely. It's like a beacon of light guiding us through the darkness.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of suffering and uncertainty, God is with us. He's working out his plan, and he's calling us to be a part of it.
That's a beautiful thought. So as we move forward in our deep dive, let's keep that in mind. Let's explore how these ancient words can speak to our lives today and offer us guidance and hope for the journey ahead.
Sounds good to me. And, it's like Jesus is using this cosmic imagery to kind of shake things up, grab our attention.
Yeah, it's definitely a wake-up call. And speaking of wake-up calls, a little later in the chapter, Jesus shares this parable about a fig tree. You remember?
Oh, yeah, the
All
fig
right.
tree.
So he uses the budding of the fig tree as a sign that summer is approaching.
Mm.
What's the significance of that? How does it fit into this larger narrative?
It's like he's saying, just as the fig tree budding means summer's coming, the things I'm telling you about, they signal the kingdom of God is getting closer.
So it's about being attentive,
Yeah,
recognizing the signs.
exactly.
And I feel like this whole chapter is about being watchful,
Right.
being prepared.
Yeah.
Jesus even specifically says, watch yourselves
Mhm.
in verses 34 through 36. What do you think that means for us today? What are we supposed to be watching out for?
I don't think it's so much about specific events. It's more like cultivating spiritual awareness.
So like being mindful of our priorities
Yeah, making sure we're not so distracted by the world that we miss what really matters.
and not getting caught up in the day-to-day anxieties.
Exactly.
Mm.
And what follows that warning?
What's that?
A call to prayer.
Oh, right.
It's like, okay, watch out. But also, stay connected to God, seek his guidance.
It's like a lifeline. It's a way to stay grounded when everything around you feels chaotic.
Yeah.
And, one thing that's really striking me is how Jesus blends this historical prophecy with these timeless spiritual truths.
Yeah.
He's talking about specific events like the destruction of the temple, but he's also giving us these universal principles about faith and resilience and staying connected to God.
It's amazing how his teachings are both timely and timeless.
I know, right? They were relevant back then,
Mm.
and they're still relevant to us today. That's the power of Scripture, isn't it?
It really is. It speaks across centuries.
So when you read this chapter, what are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, one of the things that hits me is that we need to be intentional with how we live.
How so?
Well,
Yeah.
Jesus' warnings about being caught up in the cares of this life, it's a reminder that we need to be deliberate about how we're spending our time and energy,
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life.
It is,
Yeah.
and lose sight of what really matters.
And another thing that stands out is the importance of staying connected to God through prayer.
Oh, absolutely. Like we were talking about, prayer is essential, for navigating the challenges we face.
For staying grounded.
Exactly. And you know what else? This chapter really highlights that even when things are tough, God is still with us.
Yeah.
He's working out his plan, even when we don't understand it. And he's calling us to be a part of that plan.
That's powerful.
Yeah. It's not just about escaping the destruction. It's about being part of building something new.
Embracing the hope.
That's it.
So amidst all the warnings and prophecies, there's this underlying current of hope.
Exactly. That hope, it's rooted in the promise of Jesus' return, a new heaven and a new earth.
It's a reminder to keep our eyes fixed on the horizon.
And to live in a way that reflects that hope, to be a light in the world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive into Luke 21.
I know, right? From the widow's offering to the destruction of the temple and Jesus' second coming.
It's been a journey through prophecy, warning, and ultimately hope.
And we're not done yet.
Nope. We've got more to explore. So join us again for the final part of our deep dive into Luke chapter 21. We'll be wrapping up with some final thoughts and reflections on how we can apply these ancient words to our lives today. So we're back. As we wrap up this deep dive into Luke chapter 21, one thing that keeps coming back to me is how this chapter doesn't just, tell us what's going to happen. It actually challenges us to think about how we would respond.
Right. Like, put yourself in the disciples' shoes.
Exactly. If we were standing there with Jesus, hearing these words, what would we do? How would we feel?
A powerful question to consider.
It really is. And I think that's what makes this chapter so relevant even today. We might not face the same threats as the early Christians, but we definitely have our own challenges and uncertainties to grapple with.
No, for sure.
So how can we apply the principles of generosity, vigilance, faithfulness that Jesus emphasizes in this chapter? How can we live them out in our own lives?
It's like he's giving us a blueprint for living,
Yeah, it's not just about believing the right things. It's about putting those beliefs into action.
Exactly. Living out our faith in tangible ways, showing compassion, working for justice.
Making a difference in the world.
That's it.
So even though Luke 21 paints this picture of upheaval and uncertainty, it also offers this really profound message of hope and resilience. It reminds us that God is with us,
Always
even in the toughest times.
guiding us, calling us to be agents of his love.
That's a powerful message to carry with
It
us.
is,
I love it.
that no matter what challenges we face, we can find strength and hope in our faith in Jesus.
And in the promise of his return.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this deep dive into Luke chapter 21.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation.
It really has, and we hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking, and that you'll continue to explore and question and seek truth. Until next time, everybody,